of course, still Sammy Wilson, DUP's Brexit spokesman. Is there some footsie going on between Labour and the DUP over this issue?
No, there's not, and I don't know that Jeremy Corbyn will be all that worried in the long run about Northern Ireland being separated from the rest of the United Kingdom.
But he's making the same arguments.
He is making the same arguments because the arguments are factual. And you know, I was really surprised at the answer that she gave to Jeremy Corbyn when she said, "I don't think you've read the agreement," when he made that point. Because Article 9 of the Northern Ireland, I think it's Article 9 of the Northern Ireland Protocol, makes it quite clear that in regard to checks along the Irish Sea, or between Great Britain and Northern Ireland, all that is promised is that best endeavours will be made to try and avoid that. And this is the important point at the very end of the article. And I'm paraphrasing because I can't remember the exact wording. But it will only be with consideration of the EU rules which exist on ensuring the single market and the European integrity of its single market. Now, that being the case, once the United Kingdom, one, decides to diverge in terms of EU regulations, or two, does trade deals with other countries which are producing goods which don't conform to EU regulations, then there will of necessity, under that protocol, there will of necessity be a border between Northern Ireland and GB.
OK, we'll get into the technicalities. I think this is a very important debate, and we're going to get into that technicalities. I just want to talk about the politics with Jenny. I'm right to pick something. There's something going on there, isn't there? And your use of DUP language about the Irish seaboard. You could say, for example, the backstop is a reasonable, I'm sure Gillian would agree, backstop is a sort of reasonable, slight escalation in the checks, but you're choosing to attack the backstop because you want his party to vote against the government in a confidence vote. That's what's going on here.
What Sammy's party does is a matter for them, and we are certainly not trying to persuade or cajole the DUP to do anything. I don't think we'd be very successful if we even tried to do that. Our problem with this is that we want the whole of the UK to be in a permanent customs union, and that is not what is allowed for in this agreement. Right. What Sammy's pointing out, and he's right to do so, is that on day one, actually, you probably wouldn't have any of these issues with regulatory checks. But as we proceed, and because the backstop, even the Prime Minister just now couldn't tell us how long this backstop could be in place for, over time there could well be divergence. And that is something that the DUP have a huge issue with, and it's something that it contradicts what we want, which is a permanent customs union. But so for very different reasons, I would say, we're objecting to this deal.
So you vote down the deal, but it does help. I mean, Nigel Dodds was quoted yesterday. He put out a statement last week saying even Jeremy Corbyn gets it. Now, it's not anything I'd ever expect. The DUP obviously has some long-standing issues with Jeremy Corbyn and John McDonnell and and we're quite shocked by their leadership of the Labour.
That's how bad this deal is, Faisal. That's the issue. That is how bad this is.
OK, let's bring in Gillian. OK, so Sammy points out that there are protocols in there that will lead to changes in the regulations around goods and extra checks, particularly for food and animal products and products of animal origin. This situation will change. Surely he's allowed to oppose that. He doesn't want... He wants the situation to remain the same.
So what everybody's doing is overlaying their own fears on what could happen in this agreement. There's the political declaration.
What could happen under a treaty? It's a treaty.
The treaty and the political declaration, because, of course, they have to go together as a package.
But the other part of it is in the treaty.
Yes, but here's the thing I think we probably need to make clearer, and it's just come to me as I was listening to, is this concept that a backstop, which the Prime Minister says is highly unlikely that it's even going to be used, then we're talking about the length of time that it could go on. That also has to happen to be a long time, because these rules don't change very quickly either.
Norway thought it was in the European Economic Area temporarily, and it's still there for 30 years.
Three things which are highly unlikely have to happen, and I think we have to do a better job probably of explaining how that can't be the case, because it is true that within Article 15, the way it's constructed, it can't go on forever. So we have to probably, and this will be what's going on this week, to get more certainty around that. As for Labour's position, why on earth would you want to say today, I want to be in the customs union, which basically means
no
trade for a year, which basically means they give up on doing any trade deals at all. Why would you want to give up when this deal is better? It does, because the customs union doesn't allow you to do other trade deals.
Your deal pretty much gives up.
The SNP want to stay in the single market as well, which doesn't end free movement.
This deal pretty much gives up on full spectrum trade deals. You can't really do anything on goods if we were we go to the Americans and say we might be may or may not be in a backstop which will cover goods, I think, and some regulations for some parts of the UK.
You can't sign.
They're just going to.
We won't be signing trade. Well, we can sign them, but we can't implement them till after the transition period is
But we can't have a full spectrum trade deal either.
Well, already,
if there's going to be the whatever it's called at the moment, the customs arrangement and all that sort of stuff, they can't.
You're talking about the standards.
We heard what Donald Trump said when he came to the UK. I mean, he sort of changed his mind a little bit, but we heard what he said, that the checkers basis would not be a basis for free trade deals with the US. So I've come back to the point.
And maybe not. But the Australian, New Zealand, Canadian, they've all said actually this wouldn't stop us at all. This having this arrangement wouldn't stop us at all, because we know we have to abide by those rules because we want to sell into the EU as well. So the reality is, for some agri-products, possibly, there may be some restrictions which may mean that, OK, it may make it more difficult to do a trade deal with some countries, but it doesn't for every country.
And some extra checks. You admit and acknowledge that there'll be different, extra, more checks between Great Britain and Northern Ireland.
You can't have frictionless trade, which is what we're trying to do, and say we're not going to have any kind of alignment on standards. Otherwise, that's obviously going to create risk.
But there will be extra checks. I mean, it's important. The text is there now. It's not. So, OK, well, you kindly hosted me in your constituency in Larne, where these checks, they do exist to some degree already. Are you really willing to throw this all up in the air for an extra intensification of checks that already exist?
Well, I mean, that's not what it's all about. But let's just talk about the checks which exist in Larne at present. Yeah. They exist in Larne at present on the basis that there are rules and regulations which apply in Northern Ireland, which also apply in GB, and the only point of checking at Larne is to make sure that those regulations which exist in GB are being adhered to with animals that cross from the Irish Sea into Northern Ireland.
There is a type of border check for a cow already.
No, but Faisal, here's the important thing. Those are regulations which we have agreed democratically in the Northern Ireland Assembly are suitable and are beneficial to Northern Ireland because it means that our products are free from disease and everything else.
But Northern Ireland will get the Assembly. The Assembly will get a chance to veto this.
The difference with this agreement is that this agreement will impose, because of the backstop, will impose upon Northern Ireland EU regulations which might be good for Northern Ireland, might be bad for Northern Ireland, might make it very difficult for our farmers or our producers to compete.
Well, hang on a minute. There's a delegation of Northern Ireland business going to Downing Street this afternoon, and Northern Ireland business has been quite supportive of having the best of both worlds, as they put it. Free access to the single market of the EU, free access to the UK too.
Northern Ireland business.
This is the jackpot, isn't it?
Northern Ireland business groups, of course, supported remaining in the EU, and also pumped out the same propaganda at the time that if there was a vote to leave, we would be in great difficulty.
Under the backstop, you could export freely to the 500 million. Could you not? Whereas if you get your way, you would only be able to export freely to the UK.
No, of course. Well, our biggest market, 5 times our exports go to GB than go to the EU. And given the nature of our exports, that pattern is going to remain. And at the same time, so for that, what you're saying, for that advantage, we will be expected to be tied to EU regulations, good, bad or indifferent. We will be increasingly, as we have discussed already, find ourselves with barriers starting to creep up between our market and GB, which disadvantages is there. And thirdly, and this was confirmed to us in the Brexit committee this morning, any trade deals which the UK enters into with other countries, we will not be able, because we tied to the customs union, to participate and benefit from. Now, that's not good for our economy.
So you're saying it's ridiculous what-if-ery.
This is ridiculous what-if-ery. In exchange, and actually the deal that protects jobs, which is why the farmers' unions and all the businesses in Ireland and the UK are backing what the Prime Minister has put forward, the deal that protects jobs is going to go by the wayside in exchange for some what-if, which is never going to happen. I agree, we have to do a better we have to do a better job of explaining how that is just never going to happen, so that Sammy feels more comfortable.
You've got 3 weeks.
But the thing is,
you're meant to be partners,
this gives us... It protects jobs, it gives us frictionless trade, ends free movement, which Labour's position wouldn't do, and gives us trade deals.
Sammy Wilson, who is your partner...
This is a good deal, which is why businesses are backing it.
Now,
the question of whether you trust whether this deal can get through or not is obviously another factor
Don't hang too much on the views of the Farmers' Union and some of the industry representatives. Let me just give you one example. The Farmers' Union have said this is a great deal. Even though if you look at the protocols in Northern Ireland, it makes it quite clear that when it comes to any aid for farmers, that the UK may, through its agricultural policy, decide to apply. It will be capped by the EU. The EU will be able to say...
You're talking about after the transition period.
This is in the agreement. This is in the
agreement. Points about the trade deals.
And yet the Farmers' Union signed up to it. I suspect it didn't even read the thing before
if you talk about the new trade deals...
The transition period is different from what's negotiated next.
OK, but if the trade deals don't apply to Northern Ireland, that is quite a serious constitutional development, is it not?
Well,
that's the whole point of Brexit for many people.
You're talking about an insurance policy that may not be used, then it being used for a short period of time.
And he's saying it's highly unlikely. The Prime Minister said in a snap election was not going to happen.
Gillian, it's not an insurance policy, it's a legal contract.
It's
let's get over this. Let's get over this language.
There's two choices:
this is
transition or backstop.
Gillian, this is a legal contract in the
which has got
withdrawal
two choices
agreement. It's not an insurance policy.
Which has got two choices in, Sammy.
The Prime Minister is signing up to legally.
Transition or backstop. That's the structure.
We're getting the best insight into its confidence and supply talks here that you can possibly imagine. But let's bring in Jenny Chapman.
I was thinking I could have gone and asked the Prime Minister a question myself rather than sit here and watch this, actually.
But the truth is, you're trying to have it kind of what they say. Well, you're trying to have it better both ways here, aren't you? You're trying to sort of you deploy his argument, but also the other side.
Our position has been so straightforward for quite a long time. It has. We want a customs union. We've asked for customs union. We've explained why.
And to be clear, you don't care about the trade deals. You just don't want the external trade deals.
We want to stay in the trade deals, but we're having to.
You want to stay in the EU trade deals.
What you've got to do is balance the benefits of being in a customs union, having frictionless trade, removing many of the issues when it comes to...
You still need a backstop with the customs union.
Well, of course, because... Yes, I understand that, but you would be
so you accept that you'll still need the backstop?
I would like to explain our position, if that's OK. We want a permanent customs union because it does remove many of the issues with the Irish border. We would still need a backstop because the Irish government would insist upon that, and they've been very clear about it, but you'd be much, much less likely to need it because we agree that we need a permanent customs union. The issue on trade deals, we would want a customs union where we would have a say in future trade deals, but you've got to balance off the benefits of frictionless trade with the EU 27 and benefiting from the trade deals we're already part of versus trade deals in the future that we may be able to do on our own and what the value of those you think might be. And
we're going to get the impact studies.
We can just sign up to this deal.
We've taken the view that we're better off being in a permanent customs union because it protects manufacturing and jobs in many of our communities, and we just place more weight on that.
We've got about a minute left. I'm going to put the same question to all of you. The Prime Minister keeps on saying, when you pushed on no deal, that no Brexit at all is a risk, she calls it. Others would say it's an option. Is no Brexit a possibility?
It depends how she proceeds. I'll tell you what isn't a possibility, though, is no deal. That is not going to happen.
Gillian?
Well, from what I understand, the track that we're on right now will lead us to leave with question mark on March 2019, unless we change it. So what we're trying to do is get a deal. This is the deal. if people don't want to vote for this deal, it's actually quite unclear what will happen then. The track we're on is taking us to 20th of March, unless we do something different. How the something different gets engineered is another question within Parliament,
If
etc.
I gave you a binary choice, Sammy Wilson, between this deal and no Brexit, what would you go for?
Well, let me just answer the question you asked. You said you were going to ask all three of us, first of all.
We've got 10 seconds, sorry.
Well, the Prime Minister contradicted herself today. On one hand, she told Jeremy Corbyn, you risk no breakfast. On the other hand, she told this.
On that note,
she told
do
this.